Welcome to Newshour. Today marks a month of Trump. 1 month ago today, President Donald J. Trump was inaugurated for the second time. And what a whirlwind of a presidency it's been in just these short weeks. Dozens of executive orders, mass firings, tariffs and trade wars, the Gaza resettlement plan, and now an approach to Ukraine that has confounded and profoundly split politicians around the world. President Trump remains immensely popular with his core supporters, but has there ever been a more polarizing US president? Let's take a look now at a month of President Trump.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
US President Donald Trump, now in his first month back in office, has made waves with a series of bold and controversial moves, both on the international and domestic fronts. On the international stage, Trump has shaken up foreign relations. In the Middle East, his suggestion to take control of the Gaza Strip has sparked heated debate. The president proposed that the US would take responsibility for dismantling weapons and unexploded bombs, even suggesting Gaza could become the Riviera of the Middle East.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site, and get rid of the destroyed buildings.
Additionally, Trump proposed permanently displacing Palestinians from Gaza, stating that people there had no choice but to leave the area devastated by Israel's military assault. In trade, Trump has reignited the trade war, implementing tariffs of 25% on steel and aluminum imports from Canada, Mexico, and China. After Mexico agreed to reinforce its northern border with 10,000 National Guard members to stem the flow of illegal drugs, Trump paused new tariffs on the country for 1 month. Later, Trump also announced that he would postpone threatened tariffs on Canadian imports for at least 30 days. The tariffs are a part of his larger goal to boost US manufacturing. However, in January, prices rose up 0.5%, with economists attributing some of the increase to the higher production costs triggered by tariffs. Additionally, industrial output has slowed, with manufacturing down 0.1% and auto production falling by 5.2%. Trump also took an aggressive stance on NATO funding, calling for member nations to significantly increase their defense contributions. He suggested that the US should not continue to shoulder an unfair burden for NATO's military expenses, proposing that NATO allies should pay 5% of their GDP for defense. US President has also focused on Ukraine, pushing for peace talks between Russia and Ukraine. However, US allies have expressed concerns about Ukraine's exclusion from these discussions, fearing it could weaken their position. President Zelensky also stressed that no peace can be reached without Ukraine's direct involvement. In addition, Trump has frozen US aid funding to multiple regions, including Africa, Asia, and Latin America, halting programs administered by USAID. This has impacted humanitarian efforts, counter-narcotics programs, and media funding initiatives, which had been used to shape narratives globally. Turning to domestic issues, Trump's first month has seen a flurry of executive actions and controversial decisions. Perhaps the most shocking, his decision to pardon over 1,500 individuals involved in the January 6, 2021 Capitol riots. He also dismissed several federal agents linked to investigations surrounding the riots, drawing criticism for what some see as an effort to undermine accountability. On the federal level, Trump has launched a major overhaul of the government, firing thousands of employees in key agencies. The White House has justified the firings as part of an effort to streamline and cut down on bureaucratic expansion. But these moves have drawn sharp criticism from opponents, with many accusing Trump of politicizing federal agencies. But the biggest shock came in the realm of his aggressive stance on immigration. President Trump has enacted intensive measures to crack down on illegal immigration, including plans to create a 30,000-bed migrant facility at Guantanamo Bay.
Today, I'm also signing an executive order to instruct the Departments of Defense and Homeland Security to begin preparing the 30,000-person migrant facility at Guantanamo Bay. Most people don't even know about it. We have 30,000 beds in Guantanamo to detain the worst criminal illegal aliens threatening the American people. Some of them are so bad we don't even trust the countries to hold them.
Trump has also rolled back several federal diversity, equity and inclusion programs across government agencies, citing them as unnecessary and divisive. These programs were initially put in place to promote inclusivity within the federal workforce, but Trump's administration has framed them as counterproductive. In terms of energy policy, President Trump has pursued an aggressive agenda to achieve US energy independence. This has included lifting climate-related restrictions on oil and gas drilling, signaling his administration's support for fossil fuel production. Trump's policy shifts have not gone uncontested. Over 70 lawsuits have been filed against his executive orders, including challenges to the USAID funding freeze, his immigration measures, and the rollback of DEI programs. Critics, including several state governments and advocacy organizations, are challenging these moves in court. Furthermore, some members of Congress, including Republicans, have voiced resistance to Trump's tariffs and the dissolution of federal agencies, signaling that his policies may face additional hurdles moving forward.
Well, in the hours since President Trump called Ukraine's president a dictator, European leaders have been queuing up to voice support for Volodymyr Zelensky. Let's have a listen now to some opinions on this topic from people out and about in Kyiv earlier today.
Zelensky is definitely not a dictator. He has always stood for our country in any case. I voted for him too. I hope that Trump changes his decision because he was wrong making such a statement. I support him. He does a very good job standing up for our country. He does not fall back.
It is outrageous. Everything is according to Ukraine's laws. He is a valid president. I was outraged by such statements. My attitude didn't change. Because he has done everything he could, and he hasn't made any critical mistakes. He continues doing his job. Despite the difficult situation, he is coping. I see Trump as someone who builds everything on hype and business. He only needs money. Regarding his accusations, he says a lot of stupid things. Of course, we need the elections, but it is impossible to hold them, because the war is ongoing. I don't support Zelensky. He is not my president. I didn't vote for him. I want to say no more.
I think he shouldn't have said that because he is a president and his statement concerns our president. From a diplomatic point of view, it is incorrect. Whatever he thinks about our president is his personal problem. If he has no intention of helping Ukraine, he should just say so, but he shouldn't cross the line to personalities. That's it. I think we shouldn't discuss this topic because the country is in state of war. There is a person making decisions, who is responsible for these decisions, who must realize that the consequences of his decisions will impact our children's future. I don't want to speak about my attitude towards Zelensky. Elections, if our constitution allows elections, then let there be elections.
I think it is incorrect. Trump has the same rating in the US as Zelensky has in Ukraine. I think so. I support him, Zelensky. I didn't vote for him, but I have supported him during the whole war. I will support him in the future.
Well, even by President Trump's standards, it's been a whirlwind 24 hours. Let's go now to Washington, D.C., where our very own Obey Sharbanda is waiting for us. Obey, it's hard to overstate how shocked many people were when the tweet came out yesterday calling President Zelensky a dictator. Now, I know I've asked you many times, both on and off air, to try and explain what might be going on in the mind of President Trump, and this is no exception. What's really going on here? Is this carelessness? Is it someone being carefree? Or is it someone being calculated? Has a deal been done behind the scenes between President Trump and President Putin to remove President Zelensky as part of the peace deal?
I think this is very much calculated by President Trump. I mean, it's been essentially a week long of attacks that we've seen from the American president directed towards Ukraine's leader, Zelensky. And a lot of this is stemming from the fact that it seems that the phone call that President Trump had with Zelensky following that phone call between Presidents Trump and President Putin, that it didn't seem to have gone well. And J.D. Vance, let's not forget, the vice president also sat down with President Zelensky on the sidelines of the Munich Security Conference. So I think this is a reflection of frustration by the Trump administration and a personal frustration by the president himself on the way that Zelensky has reacted to the American initiative to try to bring this war to an end. Let's not forget, the domestic politics here plays a big role, is a big factor here. President Trump has demanded from the Ukrainians access to the mineral rights of the rare earth minerals in eastern Ukraine. A deal was presented to President Zelensky by the American Treasury Secretary that the Ukrainians essentially said, well, we need to study it more. And then Zelensky made that public statement that essentially rejected the mineral rights agreement that was presented to him. He was essentially told, you have to sign this now. And that seems to have really angered President Trump, in addition to the public statements that Zelensky made following the talks in Riyadh in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia between the Americans and the Russians. So it seems the mindset in Washington, particularly in the close inner circle of President Trump, seems to be that Zelensky is not appreciative enough of what the president is doing and the billions of dollars that the United States has provided to the Ukrainian budget and to the Ukrainian military, in addition to weapons that were directly provided from the American military stockpile to Ukrainian forces that are fighting on the front lines against the Russians. And that seems to be have led to President Trump making these very sharp criticism of Zelensky that bring his legitimacy into question. So there seems to be a multitude of factors here, from both the way that President Trump handles diplomacy on a leader to leader level, and the belief here that in the Trump world that Zelensky does not seem to be appreciative of what President Trump is trying to do here. I mean, look, we've seen President Trump refer to the war from a personal perspective, saying that he's seen the images of the deaths of the Ukrainian soldiers, of the Russian soldiers. In the speech that he recently gave, the president, discussed the destruction of Ukrainian cities and how he wants to bring that conflict to an end. But we've also seen J.D. Vance, the vice president, posting on social media on X, highly critical of Zelensky, and of course of Elon Musk, a close advisor to the president. So this seems to be that if the view here from Trump administration, if Zelensky doesn't change his tone and at least provide, show some sort of indication that he's appreciative of what President Trump is trying to do here, that, well, maybe those weapons down the line will not arrive and any additional funds from the U.S. Treasury will not be sent to Ukraine to help in its ongoing war. But this might also be, lastly, a pressure tactic to tell Zelensky, hey, we want a deal fast with the Russians, and you're going to have to accept it no matter what.
Obey, the UK Prime Minister has expressed support for President Zelensky, even to the extent of not ruling out sending British troops. But he's also stopped short of overtly criticising President Trump. This upcoming visit is going to be very, very tricky for Sir Keir Starmer, isn't it?
Yes, the United Kingdom has really been at the forefront of Western military aid to the Ukrainians from the very beginning. In both the previous administration and the current administration in London. But there's only so much that the United Kingdom can do militarily for Ukraine without America's help. Remember, there is that special relationship between the United States and the UK as allies, both as NATO allies and as bilateral strategic partners as well. And so it's, Keir Starmer is probably trying to walk a tightrope politically. He doesn't want to antagonize, President Trump, because the UK at the end still needs American support. And at the same time, that he doesn't want to, of course, jettison that bilateral support and the strategic military support that the United Kingdom is providing Ukraine. Look, it's all about numbers here. I mean, the UK's military, we've seen a number of cuts in the defense budget over the years. So there's only a finite amount that the UK can provide. And what happens with, if a ceasefire and an eventual peace deal is provided, can the United Kingdom politically and logistically afford to deploy tens of thousands of troops, perhaps into eastern Ukraine, to serve as a buffer force if Ukraine is not in NATO and if there's no actual alliance or an Article 5 agreement that would trigger the UK to order its troops to fight on behalf of Ukraine if the conflict arises again between Ukraine and Russia, following, if as part of down the line. And it seems here that the UK really wants American assurances before it decides to commit a significant amount of military forces into Ukraine.
And Obi, let's take a look at France now. Now, President Macron has traditionally been very effective at marshalling together European leaders into some kind of consensus. Europe has been weakened, no doubt, by recent events. Are there any glimmers of hope at all for the bilateral relationship between France and the US?
Well, Emmanuel Macron, declared that he was going to organize an emergency summit in Paris of European states, following the Munich Security Conference and that speech that J.D. Vance, the vice president, gave, essentially saying that, hey, we want to see Europe take the lead for Europe's defense. But by all accounts, that Paris conference didn't really lead to any concrete agreement. And, Emmanuel Macron, make these statements before or try to organize these sort of grandiose conferences without any real tangible impact, and now, of course, we've heard from Emmanuel Macron following President Trump's statements on Zelensky, saying that, hey, France is going to take the lead, militarily, that France wants to see the European countries, take the lead for European defense, which, incidentally, you've seen, is the message coming from the Trump administration. The question is, again, logistically, financially, does France have the defense budget? And again, just like the United Kingdom, France has been slashing its defense budget over the years. So does France have the military capacity and financial capacity to fill the void of the Americans in Ukraine, should that need arise? And that there is a big question on whether the rhetoric by President Macron can really match the actual military and operational capabilities of the French, particularly when they're facing a Russian military that has significantly expanded during this time scale of the war. Look, President Zelensky himself said it at the Munich Security Conference that the Russian military has more brigades compared to Ukraine and all the major European military powers combined. So this again goes back to that criticism that's been made by the Trump administration, that they do not believe that Western military powers like Germany and France are taking this war seriously, and that they have not done enough to prepare their own population to be really to accept sort of a wartime mentality and a wartime government spending on their military forces, and given them the fact that the United States, at least probably, is not going to be providing the billions of dollars down the line to Ukraine. Given especially what we've been hearing from President Trump. So, look, Macron is talking a big game. There's big questions on whether he can actually follow through.
Obey, thank you as always, Obey Sharbanda, for us there in Washington, D.C. Well, that is all we have time for on this edition of NewsHour. Please do stay with us for plenty more news and analysis. And from all of us here in Baku, thank you very much for watching.